The economy is booming, GDP is up, and markets are at all-time high. In fact, unemployment is low. But you still cannot afford a house. Not a mansion, not a house with a view, a simple house. And it will take several years of your salary before tax to even buy one. Something is not right. Why can't you afford a home in this booming economy? I spent weeks reading and discovering government filings and also about pension funds and different annual reports to understand what is the issue. And what I found isn't what most people think. And part of this answer is actually sitting in your payslip right now. In this investigation, we are going to uncover 3 questions. Is your own pension fund part of the reason why you can't afford a home? Is there a piece of software that was coordinating rents across different cities? And what happened when the government finally came after it? And finally, what is this crisis that is same in Toronto, Mumbai, London, and Austin, the cities that have nothing else in common? Let's get started. Imagine 2 people who are living in the same city and are of same age, in fact with same income, and they have a similar starting point of $40,000 in savings. The only difference is that in 2012, one of them used that money as a down payment on a house, and the other kept renting and decided to invest her money into index funds or other instruments. Person A bought a house in 2012. Their monthly payment about $700 a month. Person B, that person decided to continue renting for $1,200 a month, which eventually became $2,400 in the last 14 years. So they spent on an average $1,800 a month. Person B was still disciplined. They invested every dollar they would have spent on a down payment. And after 14 years, their portfolio was only $164,000, whereas person A's house is worth $384,000. So, similar starting point, same discipline, but person B paid $181,000 more in rent than person A paid in mortgage. The rent ate their gains. Same starting point, same discipline. The difference is not the effort. The difference is access to one asset class at the right moment in the history. So, if you really think about it, person B isn't just a column in that comparison. She earns good money. She doesn't spend recklessly. She has done everything that all the finance influencer told her about on investing. Yet, she cannot afford a house in the city where she grew up or where she is working today. I built this comparison thinking it was an American story, but then I started looking at other countries to understand if they are facing similar issues. Let's take India, not a country that gets enough airtime in most housing crisis coverage. A finance forum thread from a professional in Mumbai who documented exactly what happened to his own market. He said that in 2007, he bought his first 2-bedroom apartment for 3.5 times of his annual income. Today, the same apartment costs 34 times his annual income. And this is just not in one place. In fact, in Mumbai, the price to income ratio is 14.3x. Delhi and NCR, that number is 10.1x. And the Indian national average is 7.5x, which is up from 6.6x in 2020. In England, it shows up as ages. The average first-time buyer is now 34. 22% of UK's first-time buyer in 2025 were over 40. That was 18% the year before. In fact, 2 points in a single year. That's not a drift. That's people giving up. So, if you think about it, people always think that the simple solution to this is building more homes, right? So why hasn't building more fixed it? The answer starts in 2009. Before we continue to the next part of the story, it would mean the world to us if you consider supporting this small channel. You just simply have to like, subscribe, and share this video with anyone that you feel this content is relevant. And share your thoughts in the comment down below. I intend to reply to all of your comments. Back to the story.
I think this is the most significant financial crisis in the post-war period.
Soaring gas prices, falling home prices, and rising unemployment.
In 2008, the global financial system nearly collapsed. Central banks responded the same way everywhere. The US Federal Reserve, the Bank of England, the European Central Bank, They decided to cut interest rates to all-time low, in fact in some places near to zero, and kept them for the same level over a decade. The US 10-year Treasury yield was 5% in 2007 and around 1.5% in 2020. Bank of England, their base rate was 5.75% in 2007 and close to 0.1% in 2020. ECB, their deposit rate was negative from 2014 to 2022. The stated goal was to restart the broken economy. And the side effect, it broke the housing markets in every country simultaneously, and here's why. Pension funds, they are supposed to be managing your retirement savings for teachers and nurses and government workers in almost every developed country. Their return target was 7 to 8% annually, whereas the government bond yield, their return was 1 to 2%. This gap, this massive gap of 5 to 6 percentage points, is the reason why we feel the housing is broken. They have a legal obligation to hit their return targets. Think about it. When bond yields are almost zero or they fall to near zero, pension funds cannot hit the target through fixed income alone. They have to go somewhere else to diversify and to generate more return. That somewhere else is globally and simultaneously was real estate. Not a commercial property, not office buildings, residential real estate, the homes that people are living in. So every pension fund in the developed world started running similar calculations at the same time, and all of them, almost all of them, landed on the same asset class to deploy their capital. Let's look at Austin. Austin, Texas built residential units aggressively. More permits per capita than almost any other American city. Prices fell 20% from peak and rents declined for 12 straight quarters. Supply worked. That part is true. But here's what the same data shows. Construction completions versus institutional purchase. While prices corrected, institutional buyers absorbed the inventory. Supply created that dip for them to buy. To make it simple, what that means is it never helped the first-time buyers. All of this massive profits went to entities that could buy at scale precisely because prices had dropped. This is what I call as supply capture. It's what happens when the same pool of capital that inflated the market is also positioned to absorb any correction. Now, if you go back to person B's city, perhaps new towers went up, rents softened slightly, but she still can't buy it because the units in her price range went to funds with balance sheets bigger than most city or governments. Not because they outworked her, but because they had different kind of money behind them. If you think about it, it was her money all along, which brought me down to this realization. Most likely every month you get a pay slip, and in your pay slip you see a line about pension, 401k, superannuation, or whatever the hell your country calls it. For her, for person B, she never looked at where that money goes, and I decided to. I started reading the annual reports of those pension funds. So let me paint the picture. Person B gets paid on 25th of every month. Before the money hits her account, a line disappears. She has always assumed it was going somewhere responsible. This is the CalPERS annual report, which basically means California Public Employees Retirement System. This is the largest public pension fund in the United States with over $500 billion and 2 million members, which includes teachers, nurses, firefighters. Think about it, $52 billion of that went to real estate investments. Some also went to commercial, some through private equity funds invested again in residential real estate. In the same cities, those teachers and nurses are trying to afford. I hope you understand the hypocrisy of it. Everybody is buying the same place. Your pension fund, your private equity, and you yourself. Let's understand this clearly. Your paycheck funds a pension program. Now, this pension fund has two ways to deploy the capital into real estate. One, directly, which is about 10%, and through private equity. Now, this private equity often spends or invests more money into the similar targeted real estate markets. Now, what does that mean is that the supply in the market reduces, which basically means your landlord, which could be a private equity company or someone else, has to raise your rent because limited supply, which also means you cannot afford to buy. So the reason why you are unable to buy a house is massively due to your pension funds. Think about it. what that loop means. Imagine you hired someone to manage your money, and without telling you, they used part of it to buy the building you rent. Then they decide to raise the rent on it. And every year they send you a letter that your investment is performing well. I mean, it has to, right? Because you are paying the extra rent. This is it. You are funding your own displacement. So now, naturally, you must be thinking that your pension fund managers are evil. Well, they are not. They have a fiduciary duty, a legal obligation to maximize returns for their beneficiaries. That means for you. When they invest in residential real estate, they are doing exactly what they are supposed to do. And this is exactly what makes it horrifying. The workers whose contributions fund the machine are the same workers who are being priced out in the same market by that fund. But pension funds don't decide the numbers on your renewal letter. That decision, that specific figure, is made up somewhere else, and typically through a piece of software. And to understand where that software came from, I need to take you to Houston in 2006. A man named Jeffrey Roper used to work for Alaska Airlines. His job was yield management. That means the system airlines uses to price seats dynamically. Same seat, different prices depending on demand. In 2004, he joins Texas software company called RealPage. His idea was to do the same thing to the rent. And in 2006, he tested this for the very first time. In Houston, a street behind their townhouse was shut down due to a grocery store being built. The noise and disruptions for months. The leasing staff wanted to discount the rent because the normal human response is that the street is a construction site and it is only fair that we should price it down because people most likely will not rent it out. However, Roper's software looked at something different. The software didn't care about what is rational, what is fair. It looked at data. How many people are searching for apartments in that area? How many units are completing or are available? And what comparable buildings are actually charging? The data said people still need to live somewhere, and there's nowhere cheaper nearby. So they will pay the market rate regardless of the noise. The staff were thinking about what tenants deserved, and the software was thinking about what the market would bear. Now, this is a contradiction because they were not the same numbers. Funny enough, the units rented significantly more than what staff expected. That was a eureka moment for this company. In that moment, someone decided that human judgment is completely flawed and we need softwares that looks at real data and how to maximize their profits. In Roper's own words on why the software overrode the leasing agents, he said that there is way too much empathy and on competitors who priced it below market. If you have idiots undervaluing, it costs the whole system. That Houston moment scaled to 13.5 million apartments. And here's the mechanism. Landlord A, he feeds his data to RealPage, an actual rent paid, occupancy, lease date, etc. Landlord B, he does the same. Landlord C does the same. Now, what RealPage algorithm does is it assesses the availability, the daily rent, the occupancy, and the lease durations, and then recommends what should be the rental for A, B, and C. If you think about it, this is competitors' private data, actual paid rents, not published prices, all pooled into one algorithm and sent back to all of those people simultaneously. The landlord's default setting is accept the recommendation and no active decision required, and the rents keep going up. In 2017, RealPage decides to buy its only significant competitor, and the Department of Justice reviews the merger and they let it through. Roper himself told to ProRepublica that I was surprised that the DOJ let that happen and go through. Now, what does that mean? It means this market is monopoly. The software is monopoly. The architect didn't expect to be approved. 5 years later, the DOJ reopened this investigation. And let me highlight some key findings. They said that coordinated pricing, suppression of competition, and sharing of competitively sensitive information among horizontal competitors. This is the legal definition of a cartel, which translates into $3.8 billion per year, transferred from renters to landlords. Why? The algorithm was setting rents, the landlords using it were running their own extraction. So what happened to this lawsuit? The DOJ settled with RealPage in November 2025. They banned the collection of non-public competitor data, 3-year monitor, and financial penalty for a cartel extraction of $3.8 billion. And do you know what the penalty was? $0. This is how civil consent decree works. No criminal referral means no criminal fine. The cartel has a name. The harm was a dollar figure and the fine was $0. And now I want to come back to the third question from the intro. Why is this crisis identical to cities which have nothing else in common? I have shown you so far three mechanisms: a global capital shift into housing, a pension loop that funds your displacement, and an algorithm that coordinates rents. But the most concrete way to see the answer is to look at who actually owns the property in your city. More often than not, when you start looking into it, you'll realize that the owner of that property is a company, not a person. In most of those cases, that company's registered address is going to be a law firm. Now, here is whose money is behind that structure. Blackstone Real Estate. They have invested into US, UK, Germany, Australia, India, Spain. Then we have Brookfield Asset Management. They have invested into US, Canada, UK, Australia, Brazil, Germany. And finally, we have GIC, who have invested into US, UK, Japan, Australia. These are few of the global institutional real asset firms whose asset under management was $1.4 trillion in 2016. And in 2024, that is $3.5 trillion. What does that mean? It simply means that the pool of institutional money targeting global real estate more than doubled. It doubled because central banks held rates near to zero for over a decade. And every pension fund on earth was running the same calculation at the same time. So, your city's housing market is not a local market. It is a node in a global yield-seeking network. In the Demographia survey, 95 markets surveyed and markets qualifying as affordable is zero. Not one, but zero. Which basically means globally, you are screwed when it comes to affordable housing. So, come back to this person B. She is 34 years. She has $40,000 saved. She has been paying $300 extra per month since her algorithmic rent increase. And she has been contributing to her pension fund for the last 12 years. Here is her final numbers. If her pension fund's real estate allocation generates an additional 1% annual return on her $50,000 retirement fund, that's $500 this year. And her rent can potentially increase to $3,600 this year. She will end up losing $3,100 in the same year from the very fund that was supposed to protect her future. There has been accountability. The DOJ named the algorithm. The US Senate passed the Road to Housing Act, but none of it changed the pension fund structure and none of it addressed the global capital shift. None of it gave the person B the $3,100 back into her pocket. The system can be seen now. The people running it can no longer claim they didn't know. That only matters if enough people understand what they are looking at and where their money is being invested. You do now. The system didn't break. It worked exactly as designed, just not for you.